You think the problem is that you lack discipline. It isn't. The thing standing between you and the man you are trying to build is not a missing trait. It is a part of you that you have spent your whole life refusing to look at, and every time your willpower collapses, that part is the one pulling the rope. You have read the books. You have downloaded the system. You have set the alarm and meant it. And still, somewhere around the fourth week, the thing comes undone, and you call it weakness, and you resolve to want it more. But you have never lacked wanting. A man who builds a body, a business, a life from nothing does not lack wanting. So something else is happening, something the productivity language cannot name, because it is not on the surface where you keep looking. It is underneath. There is a part of you that does not want what you want, and it has been there longer than your ambition, and it is stronger than your morning routine, because it is older than your morning routine. Tonight, I am going to show you that part. I am going to show you where it came from, why it sabotages you precisely when you are closest to winning, and the thing almost no one will tell you. That the same force tearing down what you build is the exact power you have been trying to summon. Stay with me. The door you keep slamming is the one you need to walk through. So let us start with the thing you do not say out loud. There is a specific failure you carry. You know the one. The streak you broke and lied about. The discipline you perform in daylight and abandon at night. The version of you that exists in the caption, in the post, in the way you describe yourself to other men, and the version that actually shows up when no one is recording. The gap between those two is where your shame lives, and you have spent a great deal of energy making sure no one sees it, including yourself. I am not going to tell you to forgive yourself for it. That is the soft lie, and you did not come here for softness. But I am also not going to tell you that you simply need to try harder, because you have tried harder. And trying harder is what brought you to this exact ledge, again, for the third or fourth or 10th time. Here is what I want you to consider instead. That failure is not a verdict on your character. It is information. It is a signal flare sent up from a part of you that has no other way to speak. When a disciplined man collapses against his own stated will, that collapse is not random, and it is not moral rot. It is precise. It happens at specific moments, around specific things, in a pattern you could almost predict if you were willing to look at it without flinching. The shame tells you the failure means you are broken. The shame is wrong. The failure means something inside you is in conflict with the life you are building. And that conflict has a structure and a source and, though you will not believe me yet, a use. The man who can read his own sabotage stops being its victim. But first he has to stop calling it a sin and start treating it as evidence. Before we go down into where that conflict comes from, we have to fix what you think discipline even is. You imagine it as force. Picture a man gripping the wheel against his own desire, white-knuckling through the cold morning, overpowering the lesser self by sheer will. That image is everywhere, and it is wrong, and it is quietly destroying you. Because if discipline is force applied against yourself, then every disciplined act is a small civil war. And you are both the army and the territory it burns. No one can sustain that. No one is supposed to. Watch the men who actually have what you want. The ones whose consistency looks effortless, almost boring. They are not winning a fight each morning. They have no fight. They rise and they do the work the way you breathe. Not because their will is stronger than yours, but because there is no opponent inside them throwing its weight the other way. That is the secret the grind never tells you. Discipline is not the strength of the rider. It is the absence of a horse trying to throw him. When the whole man is pointed in one direction, almost nothing is required. Effort you feel, the dread before the gym, the resistance before the desk, the way starting costs you something it does not seem to cost other men, that effort is not the price of discipline. It is the sound of a part of you fighting back. You have been trying to win that war by recruiting more force for one side. But you cannot outmuscle yourself. The muscle is on both ends of the rope. What you call a lack of discipline is not a deficit at all. It is a presence. It is something in you pulling, and until you know what it is, you will keep mistaking a divided man for a weak one. That something has a name. Carl Jung called it the shadow. And almost everyone who repeats the word gets it wrong. So listen closely, because the whole of what follows depends on getting it right. The shadow is not your dark side in the cartoon sense, not the villain crouched in your chest waiting to do evil. Shadow is everything about yourself that you disowned in order to become the man you are now. Every trait you decided was unacceptable, every impulse you were taught was too much, every part of your raw nature that did not fit the image you needed to project. You did not destroy those things. You cannot destroy them. You pushed them down out of sight, beneath the floor of your awareness, and there they remained, alive, waiting. Jung wrote that the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, and that no one becomes conscious of it without considerable moral effort. He meant it is hard. He meant it costs you something to look. But here is the part the self-help crowd amputates. The shadow is not only the ugly. It holds your repressed instinct, your buried aggression, your unspent vitality, your hunger. The very drives a man needs to seize a hard goal and hold it. Jung was explicit that this material is not merely evil. Much of it is repressed value, force that was exiled because it frightened someone, including you. He even wrote that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is lived in conscious life, the blacker and denser it becomes. Read that again. The more thoroughly you have buried this part of yourself in the name of being acceptable, controlled, admirable, the more dangerous and dense it grows down there in the dark. The disciplined man, the optimized man, the man with the brand and the routine, is often the man with the heaviest shadow of all, because he had the most to bury. So, where did yours come from? Not in the abstract. Yours, specifically, the one you carry. Go back. There was a boy, and that boy learned very early which parts of him earned warmth and which parts earned distance. Maybe you were praised for being controlled, for being mature, for being the one who did not cry, who did not need much, who could be counted on. Maybe softness got you mocked, and rest got you called lazy, and need, any need at all, got you a look that taught you to never show it again. So you became the boy who had it handled. And it worked. That is the cruel part. The persona you built was not a lie, it was a strategy, and it succeeded. You were admired for it. You were rewarded. But every identity you optimize for is built by subtraction, by cutting away the parts that do not serve the image. And the boy who learned that his hunger was too much, his anger was dangerous, his need was weakness, his desire to simply stop and rest was a moral failing. That boy did not throw those things away. He locked them in a cage beneath the house and built his whole admirable life on top of the lid. Jung called the mask the persona, the compromise between who you are and what the world wants you to appear to be. He warned that the danger is not having the mask. Every man needs one. The danger is mistaking it for yourself. The more completely you became the disciplined image, the controlled image, the man who needs nothing and handles everything, the more of your actual living nature got shoved down into that cage. This is not exotic. This is the ordinary cost of every strong identity ever forged. You did not get a shadow because something went wrong. You got a shadow because something went right, because you successfully became someone, and becoming someone always means refusing to be everything else. The cage is full, and the things in it are still alive. Now I can tell you how it sabotages you, because this is the part where it all comes together. A caged thing does not stay quiet just because you stopped listening. It pushes back the only way it can. The need you exiled does not disappear. It waits until your guard drops, until the discipline has held long enough that you feel safe, and then it surges up and takes what it was never allowed to ask for. That is the binge after the clean streak. That is the collapse that arrives not when you are failing, but precisely when you are winning. 3 weeks in, the goal finally in sight, and suddenly you blow the whole thing up and cannot explain why. You think it is weakness at the finish line. It is not. It is the part of you that was never consulted, casting its vote. Self-sabotage is the shadow's only language. It cannot speak in words because you never let it speak at all, so it speaks in the one dialect you cannot ignore. In the missed session, the broken promise, the inexplicable retreat into comfort right at the threshold of the thing you said you wanted most. And the reason this is so violent is the burying itself. The more force you use to lock that part away, the more force it brings when it finally moves. You are not being attacked from outside. You are being pulled by an exiled half of yourself that has every bit as much will as the half you identify with, because it is you, the part of you that got no say in the life you chose, settling the account. If this is landing, if you are recognizing your own pattern in what I am describing, take 1 second and subscribe before we go further, because what comes next is how you actually end this war, and most men never hear it. Stay with me. The mechanism that breaks you is the same one that can make you, but only once you stop fighting it blind. Here is a turn you will not like, and you should sit in the discomfort of it, because that discomfort is the proof. Think of the kind of man you cannot stand. Not a man who wronged you. A stranger, a type, someone whose way of being lights an irrational heat in you out of all proportion to anything he has done. For some of you, it is the lazy man, the soft man, the one who indulges without apology, who rests without guilt, who takes pleasure he did not earn. And the contempt you feel for him is total. For others, it is the opposite. The man who is louder, hungrier, more shameless in his ambition than you let yourself be, and you call him arrogant, obsessive, too much. Jung observed that what we cannot face in ourselves, we automatically cast onto others, and that this projection isolates us, because we are no longer relating to the real person in front of us, but to a piece of our own buried self pinned to his chest. The intensity is the tell. Ordinary disapproval is quiet. The disproportionate charge, the contempt that is too hot, the irritation that lingers, the man you cannot stop thinking about with disgust. That heat is a map, and it points straight down into your own cage. You despise the indulgent man because you exiled your own capacity for rest and pleasure, and now cannot bear to see it walking free. You resent the shameless one because you buried your own hunger, and his unburied hunger is an accusation. Jung put it plainly. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The man you judge most violently is holding up the exact thing you refused to keep. And the moment you can stand to say that's mine too, not approve of it, just own that it lives in you. The heat stops leaking out as judgment and starts coming home as power. Your contempt for other men is one of the most honest maps you own, if you have the stomach to read it. By now, A certain instinct is rising in you, and I want to name it before it ruins you again. The instinct is to fix all of this with more force, to hear that there is a rebellious part down there and decide the answer is a tighter cage. More rules, more restriction, a harder protocol, a colder discipline, a stricter war against the weakness. Finally crush the thing that keeps breaking your streaks. I understand the appeal. It is the only move the grind ever taught you. And it is exactly wrong, because suppression does not weaken the shadow. It feeds it. You already proved this. Every time you have white-knuckled a part of yourself into deeper silence, it has come back not smaller, but larger, not quieter, but more violent, swinging the pendulum harder the longer you held it down. This is the pattern of every man who restricts his way into a binge, who polices his every impulse until one night the dam goes and he loses in a weekend what he built in a season. The harder you press the lid, the more pressure you store, and stored pressure does not evaporate. It waits, and it detonates. You cannot win this by becoming a better jailer. The jailer and the prisoner are the same man, and every year you spend reinforcing the cell, you are spending your own strength to imprison your own strength. That is the trap the discipline industry will never let you see, because the entire business runs on selling you a tighter cage. But the man who buries the darkness does not master it. He makes it blacker and denser, exactly as Jung warned, until it owns him from below. There is a way out of this. It is not the door marked more force. That door only leads back to the same room. The way out is the one thing the grind cannot sell you, because it cannot be forced at all. The way out is to stop fighting and start facing. I need you to feel the precise difference, because everything turns on it. To fight the shadow is to keep it as your enemy, to stay at war, to spend your life as both jailer and prisoner. To face it is to walk down to the cage, look at what you locked inside, and begin the slow work of taking it back. Jung called this individuation, the labor of becoming whole, of integrating the parts of yourself you split off long ago. And understand exactly what integration is and is not, because the misunderstanding here is fatal. Integration is not indulgence. It is not throwing the cage open and letting the exiled appetites run the house. That is just collapse with a spiritual vocabulary. But integration is also not slaying the thing, not the grind-set fantasy of killing your weakness, because you cannot kill a part of yourself. You can only drive it deeper. Integration is the third thing, the one almost no one names. It is taking the energy you exiled and bringing it back under conscious command. The hunger you buried, the aggression you disowned, the raw force that frightened the people who raised you, that is not garbage to be destroyed. It is horsepower that has been running your sabotage because you would not let it run anything else. Jung was clear that the goal was never perfection. It was wholeness. Not a cleaner man, a complete one. And here is the reframe that should rearrange how you see this entire struggle. You were never supposed to defeat this part of yourself. The war itself was the mistake. The drive that has been tearing down what you build is the same drive that could build it, if you stopped exiling it and started wielding it. You do not need to become stronger than your shadow. You need to stop fighting it and take its power back into your own hands. So what does that actually look like tonight, in a life like yours? It is quieter than you expect, and harder. It begins by naming the disowned thing out loud, plainly, with no shame attached, saying the sentence you have never let yourself say. I am exhausted, and I have treated my own exhaustion as a moral failing. I am hungry for more than I admit, and I have called that hunger arrogance to keep it small. Whatever yours is, you say it. Because a thing named loses its power to run you from the dark, and a thing kept silent keeps all of it. Then, the next time the urge rises, the pull toward the comfort, the binge, the collapse, you do something you have never done. You do not obey it, and you do not condemn it. You watch it. You sit with the wanting, and you let it be there without acting and without judging, and you notice what it actually is underneath, what it is truly asking for, which is almost never the thing it reaches for. The man who can watch his own urge without flinching into either indulgence or shame has already taken back half its power. Then you take the contempt, the man you cannot stand, and instead of looking away, you write it down. What exactly do I hate in him? And you ask, with real honesty, where that same thing lives in you, caged. That is the projection coming home. And finally, the reintegration, deliberate and small. If you exiled rest, you schedule it on purpose, claim it as a discipline rather than steal it as a failure. If you exiled hunger, you let yourself want the larger thing out loud and aim at it. You are not opening the cage and fleeing. You are walking down, unlocking it on your own terms, and walking back up with what was always yours. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This is the pain he meant. It is also the only pain that builds you instead of breaking you. Now I will tell you the deepest thing, the one I have been walking you toward the whole time, and it is not what you think. You have been assuming this whole time that the part of you in the cage is your weakness. The lazy, the soft, the indulgent, the broken. And some of it is. But go down one more level, to the bottom of the cage, and look at what is actually chained there in the dark. For most men who are building something, the thing most deeply buried is not their weakness at all. It is their greatness. It is the ambition that was too big for the room you grew up in. It is the desire that frightened the people around you, the force, the appetite for dominance and scale and consequence that you learned, very young, to dim. Because your fullness made someone else uncomfortable, and their comfort cost you your size. You were not only taught that your weakness was unacceptable. You were taught that your power was. The boy who is too much, too intense, too hungry, too certain of his own largeness, gets sanded down by every hand that needs him smaller. And so, the thing you have been most disciplined against, the part of yourself you guard most fiercely, the one you keep most thoroughly caged, is very often not your worst self, but your largest. This is why facing the shadow makes men powerful rather than merely calmer. The descent is not only into your sins, it is a rescue mission for the size you abandoned to be loved. Jung did not say you become enlightened by imagining figures of light. He said you become enlightened by making the darkness conscious. And the darkness, when you finally turn and face it, is not all monster. Some of it is the man you were too afraid to be. The thing you have spent your life disciplining yourself against may be the very self you were born to become. Picture that man, the one who has gone down and come back. He is not softer. This is what no one warns you about. Facing your shadow does not make you gentle and harmless and easy to be around. It makes you more dangerous, in the truest sense of the word, because nothing in him is at war anymore. The force that used to leak out sideways as sabotage now runs straight, aimed under his own hand. The hunger he once hid, he now wields. The aggression he once apologized for, he now governs. He is not divided into the daylight performer and the midnight saboteur. He is one thing, pointed in one direction, and a man like that does not need to white-knuckle his mornings, because there is no longer anyone inside him voting against the work. This is the discipline you were actually chasing the whole time. not the strained, brittle force you have been grinding out, but the effortless consistency of a man who has stopped fighting himself. And now the body you are building is built from wholeness instead of self-punishment. The business is built by a man who reclaimed his own ambition instead of shrinking from it. The self-mastery is real, finally, because there is a self to master rather than a self at war. You did not need more discipline against yourself. You needed to end the war and recover the soldiers you had imprisoned and turn them all to face the same direction. The whole man is not the nice man. He is the undivided one. And the undivided man is the most formidable version of you that has ever existed, because for the first time, every part of his strength is finally his own. So come back now to the door, the one you keep slamming. At the start, I told you that every time your willpower collapses, a part of you is pulling the rope, and you wanted to know which part. And now you do. Is the part you exiled to become acceptable. It is the hunger and the rest and the aggression and the sighs you buried under the admirable life. And it has been standing guard at a door this whole time. Here is the last turn of the key, and then I will leave you with it. The discipline you think you lack is not absent. It is guarding something. Stand far enough back, and you will see it. The thing in you that will not let you do the work is positioned squarely in front of the man you could become, and it has been holding that door shut your entire life. Not to stop you from building a better body or a bigger business, but to keep you from meeting the larger self. It is afraid you cannot survive. Collapse, the sabotage, the failure you were so ashamed of. It was never weakness. It was a guard at a threshold, and everything you want is on the other side of the one door you have spent your whole life refusing to open. You were never lacking discipline. You were standing outside your own door, knocking and calling the silence a character flaw.